Any of the Southside Crips that were actually working as informants, were any of them wearing wires or anything of that sort?
No.
No.
They were coming after the fact, saying, hey, I was here, I was listening to the conversation that was going on, this is what was said.
And did they have cases themselves that they were trying to lessen by giving this information up?
Not at that time, no.
So why were they cooperating with the police?
Sometimes they would have a relationship based on some prior incident with the police. Everybody has their own motive. It's not always because you're trying to get yourself out of trouble. Sometimes it's because you're getting paid.
Oh, so they were being paid by the police?
There are informants that do get paid.
Were any of the Southside Crips being paid by the police?
At that point in time, I can't say definitively. I'm not aware of a payment being made to the one individual I'm referring to, but he was certainly informing.
Were they paid afterwards?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. What's a typical payment that someone in that situation would get? Like, give me an example.
Yeah, I would pay somebody for information on where drugs are being sold, give them $100.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
They would tell on someone that would get that person years in prison for $100.
Well, most of them are providing the information with the understanding that they're never going to be exposed. So they can provide the information, reap a reward from that information.
$100 though?
Whatever it is.
Doesn't that sound kind of silly when you say it out loud? Like,
no, not at all. I mean, only because I know it to be true, because I worked in that environment and I had informants all over the place. And sometimes, you get together and you meet them at the Starbucks, they give you some information, you give them, $100, and you go about your business. And what they're thinking, this is an important component of this, is what they're thinking is that, I'm paying this forward because when the time comes where I do get pickled up and I'm in trouble, I've already done these guys favors and they're going to return the favor. So there's all these nuances to these relationships that get developed between cops and informants.
Okay, and the money that you would pay to these informants, you would just get reimbursed by the police department?
Nowadays, yeah, it's all very controlled. But back then, yeah, you just pull money out of your own pocket and give it to the guy and never report it. It's just,
Cost of doing business.
Yeah.
How often would these guys get busted and you would come in and say, hey, this guy did a lot of good work for me. Mm-hmm. Could we work something out and make this go away or just lessen it?
Well, if they're a valuable informant and they're providing you information that's helping you, make cases or advance cases, then yeah, you'd protect them.
So you've done that before? You've gotten cases thrown out?
Well, you don't get them thrown out necessarily. There's arrangements made. You make arrangements with prosecutors, and prosecutors introduce information to judges, and these things all work themselves out because the mindset is that we need these sources of information.
Okay.
And oftentimes, it's you're just dealing with the worst of two evils. Well, we can overlook a misdemeanor because this felony is more important.
Okay, so the judge is not involved in this whole wheeling and dealing. It's just the police and the prosecutor.
Well, the judge has his role in it. Like when you are presenting a case and you have an informant, and there's this whole idea of discovery that technically you're supposed to produce all of your information to the defense. And so you'll have these things called in-camera hearings where you bring your informant in and you say, Judge, it's in the best interest of this case because of his safety and the ongoing investigation that we keep his identity anonymous. And the judge will say, okay, is there exculpatory evidence that he has to offer? No. Okay, then I will grant that he does not have to be exposed. Or if there is exculpatory information, then a decision's made whether it's worth exposing him or throwing the case out. So there's all of these dynamics that take place. They're very complicated, but this is the way it works.
How often do informants just give you completely false information?
It happens all the time. Typically criminal informants, and even worse, jailhouse informants, you really have to take their information with a grain of salt and corroborate it 3-4 times over because they have a motive to lie, especially when they're in jail. There's a motive to lie. And sometimes an informant can give you great, accurate, reliable information one day, and then down the road you talk to him again and he's provided information that's not accurate and reliable. So it's a changing dynamic. Such is the case of an individual in the Biggie Smalls case, a guy named Michael Robinson. Right? There was a point in time he testified, he provided information that advanced a case, it was reliable. And then when he got himself involved in the Biggie case, and he's a jailhouse informant now, he's got a motive and he fabricates this big story, which waylays the investigation early on and leads Russell Poole down his rabbit hole.
Right, because I remember we interviewed Freeway Ricky Ross. And he said that after our interview, he got a call from Andrew Chambers.
I mean, you know, we talked about the guy on your show, and the guy called me one day.
Which guy?
The informant.
Which informant?
The super informant. You remember me telling you about this? It's a super informant out. This guy is like the biggest. He was like DEA's #2 weapon and #3 weapon in the war on drugs. A guy by the name of Andrew Chambers from St. Louis.
He worked for the DEA for 16 years.
Okay.
Responsible for the arrest of 445 drug dealers. But apparently at the end, he got caught perjuring himself and making up a whole bunch of information and so forth. You know about this?
Not specifically, but as you explain it, I mean, that's not unusual. Like I said, sometimes you get really good information, dynamics change, and then information can be flawed. So, you know, every time an informant comes forward and they provide you information, you've got to verify that and corroborate it, because just the nature of their information is suspect, because typically they're coming from a criminal background.
Right.